check.
Woo, woo. TikTok, time to rock. Good evening, good morning, good afternoon to everyone who's watching from all over the world. I'm your friendly neighborhood philosopher, and if you don't know who I am, I'll let one of the greatest sheikhs of our time explain it. Sheikh Yasser Qadhi, who we talking to?
As for David Wood, I have rarely come across somebody who is more vulgar, vile, foul-mouthed, noxious, repugnant, depraved excuse of a preacher. Whatever he is, David Wood, it is obvious to any person of faith, is not a man of God. He's a vulgar, obscene, evil jerk.
Jerk.
And with me now is this walking, talking, living, breathing, atheist ball of rage and tears, the Apostate Prophet. How you doing, AP?
I'm angry. What do you think? How do you think I'm doing?
That's good. I'm guessing you've never been a terrible fan of Ayaan Hirsi Ali, apart from her leaving Islam. But what are your thoughts on Ayaan?
No, I actually have. I had, and I still have, a lot of respect for her. She was one of the first, public, well-known ex-Muslim figures that I became aware of, and I thought that she always had a very, very passionate, very touching, very good story. And also, one thing that especially made me respect her is that short film that she created together with
Theo Van Gogh.
Together with Theo Van Gogh,
phenomenal,
who was killed for doing that, and she was threatened by the very same killer, and she kind of went into hiding, but still continued what she's doing. And I don't know, I just always admired how brave she was in the face of everything, and how outspoken she was, and how she didn't care at all about the backlash and all of that. So yeah.
We're going to watch some video clips, the clips of the recent panel discussion where Ayaan was talking about Christianity and why it's absolutely superior to atheism and Islam. And we'll check out those clips, and then we'll go through her article, Why I Am Now a Christian, which she titled deliberately as a kind of a reverse of Bertrand Russell's classic essay, Why I Am Not a Christian.
And it's very arrogant to assume that you can change human beings to fit into all sorts of modules, except that there is a power transcendent above us. And that idea that there is something above us, a higher power, I think that is rooted in Christianity, it's rooted in the Judeo-Christian traditions.
Catch that?
She forgot to mention Islam.
Oh, she's about to. She forgot
to mention how Islam also has a wonderful impact and contributes to society and all that. Yeah.
And in many ways, it is superior to the nihilistic Nietzsche type atheistic theology that human beings can do, and they can create everything, and they can manipulate. And it's also superior, I would say, to the faith that I grew up in, with a God and a theology and a story that gives individuals a sort of one-dimensional purpose.
Traitor!
What? She's saying that Christianity is better than Islam. I don't know why you'd object to that. Let's let her finish.
Traitor!
Go and do this. Make everyone a Muslim. And if they refuse, kill them. And then the day of judgment will come and life will be over. That's a simple story. But it's an abiding story. It's been around for 1,400 years. The Judeo-Christian tradition, that it is not up to the human being to do that. But all we can do is civilize and continue to civilize and question and check power. Power that is checked, that is the power that guarantees most people real freedom.
All right, AP, so there you have Ayaan Hirsi Ali, whom you admit is one of your greatest heroes for most of your life. And she says that the Christian view of the transcendent is superior to atheism. Now, to be fair, she did say a Nietzsche-type atheism, but you're Nietzsche's biggest fanboy in history. And she said it's superior to Islam. Your reaction, but try not to cry. Try to.
Okay, one thing about the whole Nietzsche thing is, I felt like she was mischaracterizing Nietzsche's ideas there a little bit, because it's often understood by many people that Nietzsche represents this whole thing, like this nothing matters kind of worldview and this nihilistic worldview, but in reality Nietzsche was very much opposed to nihilism, and he was a warding of nihilism. He was basically saying that he was actually even accusing Christianity of being nihilistic in a way, and religions in general of being nihilistic. And but he was saying that what is even more dangerous is the nihilism that you will fall into once you have removed God from society, and you have abandoned the morals that these religions gave, that Christianity, for example, gave. You will be left with nothing. And that nihilism to him was the most dangerous thing. And what he was talking about is that in that state, humans must learn to move forward and to become better people by building a new moral system that is based on the will to power, which is often also misunderstood. But I wouldn't say that Nietzsche was representing a nihilistic way. He was actually against that. That said, did you want to add something? Or what?
No, I was just thinking about Nietzsche as you were talking about. Yeah, he had some like when he's talking about eternal recurrence and the affirmation, are you living the life that you could actually want to recur over and over again forever, like an infinite number of times? Mm-hmm. And that often gets interpreted as like a little mental exercise, like, hey, could you actually will like everything that's happening in your life to happen over and over and over again? But one of my professors, who was a Nietzsche scholar, pointed out that like they found in his notebooks where he was like trying to prove it like mathematically that this was going to actually happen, that this is all going to happen over and over and over again. But notice this idea of like affirming everything in your life, that doesn't sound like nihilism.
Yeah, well, he was stressing the whole being authentic, not wasting your life on regret and on weakness which you are taught, but on being exactly as you said, that is one of the lines of living the life that you would be proud of, that you would be happy with if you lived it over and over again. So that's not really nihilism. That's the opposite of nihilism, I would say.
I think she could just take Nietzsche out of what she just said and then just describe it in terms of values, because what she said was, the idea that we can just make this for ourselves. So that's kind of that is in Nietzsche, that if you've removed Christianity, then you don't have the Christian morality anymore, and therefore you need something else. You need to replace it with something else. And that's where he says, must we not become like gods ourselves in order to invent this? So I think she's going in that kind of direction with the idea that we could make this up, we can invent this for ourselves. But then she talks about and just manipulate. So I think what she's on about there is a more pessimistic view of the project of morality and atheism that would go something like, yeah, there's no real foundation for any of this. So we have to figure it out, but then we have to sell it to the masses. And so for them, we have to manipulate them. We have to manipulate people into going along with these things. If you don't actually have some sort of shared value system, then it's just going to have to be some sort of mass manipulation. And that is sort of a popular view. Like, well, okay, if you're taking away Christianity and you're replacing it with something, what are you replacing it with? It looks like, right, what it looks like in the world is it's just going to be various kinds of manipulation from whether it's journalists or politicians or educators or entertainers, that what what's actually on the table for replacing it is just mass manipulation through media and social media and so on.
Yeah, I mean, I see that. I understand that to lots of people, that seems to be one of the big problems with a non-religious or post-religious world, where you were given a foundation for morality and for your meaning of life. Now it's taken away, and now suddenly you live in a void, and you could go in any direction, in every direction. And I guess one of the points that she makes also further on in this whole speech is that whatever comes into whatever replaces this morality, this foundation, will not be good enough to replace what we had, will not be good enough in the face of the approaching wave of Islam. So
Yeah, there is quite a bit in what she's saying of, okay, so, and it's kind of a response to like Western intellectuals who think, hey, you just knock out Christianity. And I mean, look at it. I mean, if you were Christopher Hitchens or Sam Harris or Richard Dawkins, like, what, we're fine. We don't believe in God and we're fine. What's the problem here? And it looks like what she's pointing out is, no, actually, you guys may be fine, but when you've got communism that's about to come at you swinging, and you've got Islam, which is about to come at you swinging, and you've got this sort of woke thing that's coming out of the West, and that's swinging at you from within, what you guys have is not going to be able to stand up against that, and therefore you're going to need something more. What do you have? So I think that's a lot of the direction she's heading in.
Even Richard Dawkins said something recently, didn't he? He said something about maybe it wasn't a good idea to.
Well, this was he actually saw this, and I think he was just thinking in terms of Islam in Europe, but because this was back in like 2010 in an interview, and he said he was asked about the decline of Christianity, and he said, I have mixed feelings about the decline of Christianity because I think it may have been a bulwark against something worse. Sounds like he was talking about Islam, and it just sounds like he was just thinking, just like observing, like, wait a minute. For 14 centuries, Christians stopped those guys from taking over Europe. Now the moment we go secular, we can't invite them in fast enough. What's going on here? There's Zach saying, does she proclaim Christ as king, or does she just give Christian values a thumbs up? Yeah, because I've been seeing a lot over the past few years, atheists who were really hostile like 12 years ago, not nearly as hostile anymore towards. So they don't believe in it. They don't believe in it at all. But they're just saying, okay, it's kind of good if a bunch of the rest of you do. And what's interesting, that used to be the standard view of atheists. Like atheists in the 80s and 90s, you had, because I was there, but you had like American atheists, and they were like the angry ones. But most atheists didn't seem to like them. Most atheists were like, hey, look, I don't believe in this stuff, but I'm fine if everyone else believes that God tells them to love their neighbor and so on. So, and then like after 9/11, then it changed, and you had the rise of the new atheism and so on. So keep in mind, like the idea of the friendly atheist is not new. Atheism just became much more hostile and aggressive for about 2 decades, but that was it was pretty common. Before
pretty
that,
short-lived, yeah. But did she do like a statement of faith? Did she say, "I believe"?
Yeah, that's what we're about to get to. It's more, she's saying something more than just, "Hey, Christian values are good or better," or something. She's saying something more than that. She is saying something about the transcendent and so on. But yeah, she doesn't sound like she's affirming, yes, I believe in God, and yes, I believe that Jesus Christ rose from the dead and so on. She's not dealing with any of that. Layman Christian said, AP, have you had a real look into Christianity? Is it something you could be open to? Have you tried praying? God bless you both. I have to say, AP has looked a lot more into Christianity than a lot of Christians. So, but what's your response here?
You can't say that, man. It's very bad.
Because he's a closet Christian.
Yeah. I have. I've spent a lot of time on that, with that over the years.
Sorry, I'm laughing at the next comment I'm about to bring up.
Yeah, in different phases. Especially, there was a time when I was several years ago. Some people remember when I was plagued with anxiety and problems like that. Were there, I thought I really need something in my life. This is unbearable. At that time, I was really, looking into that very, very closely. So yeah, there were. I don't want to say anything about my conclusions right now. I did, yeah.
And we're about to see that because we're going to go through Ayaan's article, but towards the end of her article, this is why I said she goes beyond just saying, "Hey, I give a thumbs up to Christian values and how they can help the West" or something like that. She goes into like kind of her personal need to believe in something beyond herself and so on. So we'll be taking a look at that in a moment. We got 3 short video clips, and then we're going to take a look at this article. But here we go.
I think that in the West, we made this mistake of having a debate about is there a God? Is there a God? And then having everybody weigh in and twisting ourselves into pretzels. There is no God, there is a God, which is, I think, and I've come to realize over time, that is a waste of time. It's not in the least helpful. I think what we should have done instead, what we should do instead, is compare the different concepts of God that humanity has come up with, and the different stories that humans have told each other about that what is transcendent.
Did you catch what she's aiming at there?
Yes.
Yeah, it's I mean, it's again, it's just like a different way of thinking, and she's thinking way more in like pragmatic, practical terms, saying, hey, you're saying the debate we're having is prove that this thing is true, prove that that thing is true, prove that this belief is true, prove that that is true, when what you should be saying is, hey, here's how this compares to this and compares to this and where it gets us. And this one is better than these other things that that are available to us right now. Again, she's going to go beyond that. But as far as what she's saying right here, she's saying, okay, instead of debating whether, like, what she doesn't say this, but it would be the same idea. Instead of debating Trinity versus Tawhid, you should be looking at like this sort of concept and what it leads to, and this sort of concept over here and what it leads to. And well, that one total worldview is better than this other worldview over here, or one concept of the transcendent is better than this other one. What are your, like, lots of people have a massively negative reaction to it, but I think it's actually part of it. That's actually part of your reasoning process. It's not just, hey, here are the propositions and here's my conclusion that I draw from, plugging these things into this argument form and getting this conclusion. It's real world implications for beliefs also are relevant. What are your thoughts on all this?
Well, as soon as she said that the whole debate around is there a God or is there no God is very much a waste of time. That's something I said quite a bit over the years, but for different reasons. So at first I thought, hey, that's something I said, but then the way she explains it is different. So she compares the systems to each other to figure out what is better in a pragmatic sense, I guess. And whereas I don't know if I have ever viewed it that way, if I would still view it that way. Not entirely sure, but I get where she's getting at, and this is kind of consistent with how I saw Ayaan Hirsi Ali for all these years, and with how many others saw her as well. She was never part of that whole a representative of that whole atheist crowd. She was never. Yeah,
she was rolling with them, but she did seem different the entire time.
Yeah, and she was also politically different. She wasn't very much close to the rather left-leaning mindset. She didn't participate very much in the atheist conversations and all of that. So it's not surprising that she says these things. It is very interesting though.
Yeah, I have to say, I haven't, I've watched lots of Jordan Peterson videos over the years, but normally the short ones, not like a lot of his long lectures, but I'm getting the vibe, like lots of what she's saying in some of these clips and her article. It's reminding me of the kind of things I've heard from Jordan Peterson over the years. And it sounds like she's kind of combining like the Tom Holland stuff in Dominion, where he's talking about the impact of Christianity on the world, and then combining that with like a more like psychological interpretation of the scriptures and, you know, what, like a deeper psychological meaning to things. And so like matter of fact, Jordan Peterson did this when he was having a discussion with Bill Maher. Bill Maher's like, Jonah and the whale, that's so dumb. And Jordan Peterson like breaks down like an underlying meaning to the whole thing. And Bill Maher's like, whoa, I never thought of any of that. And so it's kind of like like she's in the same direction here, and like, hey, instead of like dismissing something because you think it's silly or it's a dumb belief, why don't you like dig a little deeper and understand the relevance of this before you toss it out, something like that.
How about you think about that a little bit further?
Yeah, and she's like, and so I've realized we need to get a pen pal.
Nice.
Let's go.
And what I find appealing, for instance, about the Judeo-Christian story is that that transcendent power ends up being a story about freedom, about tempering power, about establishing institutions and establishing teachings that give unto Caesar what is Caesar's, that, don't matter, basic, maybe universal human decency then becomes that's your religious, that's how you worship your transcendent. That story is superior to a number of other stories that I know. And I think that's the story we should be having. And if you have that story, if you have that legacy, you've inherited that, then you not only appreciate it, but you also fight to preserve it. And you have a mirror to hold to the other gods that are presenting themselves as omnipotent and powerful.
And notice what you just said there. If you've got this, and here's the impact that it has on you, and here's the foundation it provides for you. She said you'll be willing to fight to preserve it. And a lot, again, she's going to go beyond this, but this looks to be falling right in line with a lot of the other stuff that's going on and that people are thinking is not the sort of thing that you fight to preserve. Mm-hmm. And you're not going to stand up and put your life on the line for this kind of thing. You're just not going to. And so, and then she adds the mirror thing that you can actually compare it to other positions and so on. Any thoughts on any of that?
Nothing to add.
Go a couple super chats here, and then we'll jump into the third clip. I think that's where she declares her a Christian. She's a Christian, or earlier. I don't know. Let's see. Giovanni here says they aren't so hostile to us now because I think he's talking about atheists. They aren't so hostile to us now because they see the ugly things coming, so they push their backs up against us. Because it's, as David says, atheists are just heretical Christians. So, he's saying that atheists are actually warming up to Christianity because they're worried about a lot of the bad things in the world. I mean, that could be part of it, but I think part of it is just kind of a failed experiment. Like if you go back 20 years, the message of the new atheist, again, as opposed to atheists in the 90s were not like this, but they said, hey, we actually need to just mock and ridicule people's beliefs until they drop these beliefs, and then everyone will be like us. Everyone will be like the intellectual new atheists and so on, and the world will be a better place. And we've had 20 years of that, and they've had a degree of success in terms of belief in Christianity declining and so on, and the numbers of atheists rising and so on. And so we've gotten a glimpse of how the world will actually change. And what you don't see is some sort of like scientific utopia forming, which is what was thought like 20 years ago. Hey, if we just get religion out of the way, it's going to be this utopia of rationality and science and so on. And it just doesn't look like that. It looks like as soon as most people reject Christianity, they cling to something else that then becomes a kind of alternative religion, even if it's just like, some weird like political cult or something like that. Seems they just jump on something else. And the actual impact is like everything becoming fragmented and everyone being at war with each other over this new idol that they've taken since they've abandoned Christianity. And I think a lot of atheists are just realizing this isn't going the way we thought. So maybe we need to pump the brakes on what we were planning here. What are your thoughts?
Yeah, I mean, even several years ago, still, or maybe I don't know, half a decade ago, there were in the atheist community, in the online atheist community, it was a very popular thing to just to post statistics and to say, look at this, look, religion is declining, look, so many atheists here, look, so many atheists there, soon people are finally realizing, they're finally waking up, and so on. Like, this was a very popular narrative, something that people always cheered about and wanted to look at. And it kind of became very quickly unpopular. It became very quickly irrelevant. It became very quickly, it faded away. Obviously, it doesn't really work like that. Religion is here to stay, as many people have acknowledged. And even if things change slightly, it doesn't mean that soon in our lifetime there'll be no more religion left. It will be all atheistic, and we will all be happy, and we will just party all day, and we will love each other and all that. Yeah, that's nonsense. It's nonsense. That's not how it works. And once you give up your religious values altogether and open the doors to everyone else, then those who didn't give up their values, which are pretty bad, will probably come in and will start imposing their values, because they will think, oh, look at this, these people don't have values, let's give them our values. Let's give them our values, let's tell them about ours, and if they don't accept it, let's beat them. So the world is not as wonderful, as happy, as cute as people thought. So that probably has an impact here.
That is an ongoing. Everyone has this exact same issue. It seems like the sort of intellectual atheists who are leading the new atheist charge. They seem to think, hey, if people get rid of religion, they'll be like us. They'll be like us.
Yeah.
You have lots of Christians who think that Muslims are just like us, except for they have a couple different beliefs, and so on. And so Christians lots of times emphasize, I've heard, don't criticize Muhammad, don't criticize the Quran, just preach how much you love them, and so on, and not realizing, hey, yeah, this does have an impact on certain Muslims and so on, but other Muslims like actually respect you more if you come at them like blasting away at them and so on. It's a culture that respects strength more than being nice and so on. But Christians in the West tend to think like I've had people watch this goes back to me and Nabil watching debates where you could watch the exact same debate with a Muslim and with some Christians, and the Christians are actually judging based on who's nicer. Like whoever is nicer in the debate, they favor that person. The Muslims are whoever's more aggressive in the debate. That guy's getting the thumbs up, like separate from arguments and so on. So anyway, and then you've got Muslims who think that underneath everything, we're all just like them and we want to subjugate them and slaughter them and so on when we actually don't and so on. So everyone has this view of other people are like me. And anyway, they're just not.
Yeah, and one of those things is also that we talked about this before. This is a very long and complicated thing, but Nietzsche pointed out the same thing. Tom Holland pointed out the same thing. It's Christianity has an impact on society. The religion that is part of that is at the foundation, at the core of a society, has a very large impact on how the society thinks. And even in an environment where people are no longer Christian, but they are post-Christian, meaning they are in a country, in a culture that was deeply impacted by Christianity, that was very much built on Christian values, people will still hold on to a lot of Christian values without even knowing it. Even when they're criticizing Christianity, or even when they are criticizing religion, when they are criticizing the Bible, and say, no, it's not good, it's intolerant, it's this and that, they are basically appealing to values which they learned from those very same religions. The sense of compassion, of being being equal, and things like that, and people people have to at some point realize that is what taught them how to think and how to feel, and whatever comes from afar to replace those values is not quite as good as they thought, you know.
Yeah, and there's you have in a culture, you'll have a belief system and a value system. When people start applying skepticism and saying, "Hey, this isn't true," they're normally targeting certain beliefs and so on. Like, let's say, in this case, a belief in God, a belief in Christianity, a belief in the Bible, and so on. They don't attack the moral values in the same way. In other words, they'll hey, why do you believe in Jesus? This is just a myth. You can't trust this source, and so on. They don't come in guns blazing at compassion and things like that. They don't attack those same things. The concern is once you've sort of swept away the foundation for these things, it is easy for someone else to come along later and then all of a sudden just go blitzkrieg. I'm appealing to the Germans in a certain reason. Go blitzkrieg on those values that now have no foundation. And then, hey, why you believe in this? Oh, only stupid people believe in this. Real people believe that you crush your enemies. And it's just easy to do that. And then, yeah, why do we believe this sort of thing?
So you, relatively early in your life, you moved away from a totalizing religious view of the world. And I don't exactly know into what you then moved, whether that was a secular humanism, but what I'm hearing from you now, and I believe this is also the case with your husband, is that you have come to a new understanding of the existence of the transcendent per se, and also of your relationship with it. Now, first of all, do I have that right? And
this is so weird. It says, I don't know what you moved in. Like, you don't know about Ayaan Hirsi Ali? Like, I know you moved away from one thing, you moved into something else, but I'm not sure what that. You didn't know that. Like,
he even had a long interview with her.
Yeah, I don't know what's going on.
Second of all, like, is that the movement that you have made, and if so, why?
So, and I made a video about this, but the actual progression seems to be, she had a view of what she's going to call the transcendent, and that's the Islamic view. And then she rejected that to where there is no transcendent. And now she's believing in she does need the transcendent, and she's going with the Christian concept because it's kind of, it looks like better for the world. And we're going to see this in the article. She's like, it's basically got everything she needs in there. But yeah, let's see.
So I rebelled against a transcendent, a concept of God, of a God that now manifests itself in, the Iranian regime, Hamas, ISIS. That was the God I grew up with. That was the story that I grew up with. I rebelled.
And by the way, that's what she just said is part of the reason that when we've seen these statistics where they estimate like between 5 and 10% of people who are still counted as Muslims in Muslim countries are actually closet atheists. I remember an article about Iraq, and this is even before ISIS. So this is pre-ISIS. There was an article talking about the younger generation in Iraq just despises religion. Again, this is pre-ISIS. This is before they saw Islam in all its glory. But they were saying that, they were saying the younger generation just despises religion based on looking around at what it produces, and they're like, we don't want anything. We don't want anything to do with this mess. And so she's looking around at Iran and the Muslim Brotherhood and all this, and saying, oh my goodness, what is this mess?
Against that, and then when I was bold enough to say, and this was in the Netherlands, I don't want any of that. I didn't convert to Christianity. I didn't convert to another religion or another God. I carried with me this idea, the three-letter word of God stands just for evil. And my best...
So notice it's not the Islamic God is evil. She just, I thought anything with God in it. So basically religion is evil.
That's what That's what many people assume people go through in general when they leave religion. I didn't really go through that, but I see that but I did have some little resentment in me at some point. But I don't think I ever really went into that like extreme direction.
And
Somebody,
I'm just saying, I'm wondering if that has something to do with kind of your background, like if you had come from like more of a like Muslim Brotherhood type background,
yeah, maybe.
if you'd be more
Yeah,
enraging.
yeah. And she also, somebody pointed it out in the chat, but she underwent female genital mutilation, and she also talked about that.
That's almost everyone in Somalia.
And she I don't know, very mistreated and stuff like that. It's I don't know.
Yeah.
Best friends became Sam Harris and Christopher Hitchens and Richard Dawkins. These are people I still love and adore. And I think over time, I'm now 53, and so when I was in this state of rebellion, it started for me when I was 32 years old. Over time, I've come to realize, and I wish Christopher was alive today to comment on what we're going through.
I say the same thing so often.
I would love to have Christopher. I mean, we got Douglas Murray. He's
Yeah.
pretty good. But yeah, I would love Christopher Hitchens' commentary on a lot of the stuff that's going on.
I would love him
that's
to comment on the whole Islamic influence and stuff that is happening around the world in the UK, especially. He would have some really, really harsh and direct and very good things to say.
Yeah, and he has the combination of having the really, really smart sound, the smartest sounding accent in the entire world, the smart sounding British accent, not one of the 11 different stupid sounding British accents. You got the smart one.
Hey, Stu, what's going on there, mate?
Hey, governor. He had the smart sounding, but then he combines it with like a massive, like a way with words. So he's got the accent, and then he's got a way with words there, and super intelligent and so on. So yeah, he's got a total package of rhetoric there. And again, I think Douglas Murray's the closest thing there is to it right now.
He's solid.
We were actually having a conversation about, in my view, the wrong conversation. Does God exist? It was the world built in 6 days. Do we believe in fairy tales? And that was the wrong conversation to have. The right conversation to have, as I said earlier, was to compare what we as human beings, the transcendent that we have imagined and developed over centuries. And so now I can say I am proudly of Judeo-Christian religion.
Hallelujah, 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 hallelujah.
A lot of you other people who've been following Jordan Peterson and gone through all his lectures and so on will probably know a lot more about this than I do. But the little bit that I've picked up, that seems to be his view of like scripture. And so like the Bible is an account of human beings sort of formulating this concept of the transcendent over centuries and so on. And so it's like a record. And so it's not true in the way your average Christian would say. It's true in a different sense. It's so it's something like that. But yeah, I don't know. She's just reminding me of stuff I picked up from Jordan Peterson over the century. And it might just be kind of like, she might be kind of switching sides from the like hostile towards religion, and these are her friends, even though she was never nearly as hostile as them, to Jordan Peterson, who is not interpreting this the way an average Christian would, but he's much more friendly to the concepts involved and so on.
I'm glad that she is more direct in her reasoning compared to Jordan Peterson, who just said, "What do you mean by God? What do you mean by do? What do you mean by you? What do you mean by believe?" Mm-hmm. So it's kind of refreshing to see the directness and the honesty here.
Yeah, it's interesting.
Without having to waste your time about, do I really think that the world was built in 6 days? Do I really believe every word in the Bible? No. But I do believe that that's Judeo-Christian tradition, and what it has brought forth those are the values that I aspire to, the values by which I live. I was called a Christian by Roger Scruton in 2008, and I said, Roger, no, I'm not a Christian. And he said, but you act like a Christian, and you behave like a Christian, therefore you are a Christian. And I think that
That's funny. You can hear cackling in the background, especially when she. It's only a few more seconds long, but she's going to say the same thing about Richard Dawkins, and you can hear. I mean, I can hear it on my headphones. I don't know if everyone else can hear it, but you can hear like cackling from some of the other people up there with her. But check this out.
That's exactly what I would like to say to Richard Dawkins. It's you act like I've been to choral music with him, which he enjoys very much, and he's one of the most Christian people I know. And so I think we've been having this. Time-wasting debates, and you grow up. I matured. Here I am.
So
that's very interesting.
It's funny this, hey, I've grown up. We had these, she's like, hey, we had these childish debates about whether this is true and whether this is not true and so on. And now I've grown up, and I don't want to have the debates about is this true? Is that true? Is this true? Is that true? It's just which notice she's saying, hey, the debates, that's all a waste of time and so on. Here I'm thinking it kind of depends on the person, and she might be suffering from what we were just talking about, that people tend to think that other people think the way they do. Like me, I wouldn't be following it if I didn't believe it. I wouldn't be following if I didn't believe in God and in Jesus. I would not be following the commands of Jesus. I wouldn't do it.
Deeper thoughts that she went through before she came to this conclusion, which would seem like, okay, it doesn't really matter to her if this religion is true or not. It doesn't really matter to her if the whole, metaphysical aspect of the whole, theological, transcendental aspect of it is true or not. What matters to her is rather that beyond all of that, beyond those basic thoughts, this religion developed over a very, very long time as a foundation to the society that we are right now. We are standing on that solid foundation. And she looks down and she sees the foundation. She appreciates it very much. And seeing that, she now values it. She has an attachment to it, and she wants to have loyalty to it, and she doesn't really care about the whole theological aspect of it. And I don't know, I feel like I appreciate that.
Yeah, and there are lots of Christians who are just like enraged by that. I'm thinking in terms of, do you really not? This, we have to be enraged all the time and be destroying the foundations of society and so on. And then, no, actually, I understand the significance here. So much so that now I consider myself a Christian. Like, I understand you want to, okay, here's what the Bible says about, actually becoming a Christian and so on. But she says that, she says in her article, say, I'm new to this, I'm going to church and things like that. And it's like, yeah, I don't know. You guys really not understand the concept of making progress in your thinking as far as the things she's talking. Now, notice everything we just heard there sounds like something. Like you could be a total atheist and agree with everything she just said, right? You said, I don't believe in any of this, but like I've had lots of atheists say, hey, I'm an atheist, but I'm a cultural Christian. Meaning I still adhere to a basic, Christian value framework and so on. But again, in her article, and I'm saying this because I'm still trying to figure out exactly what her position is. In her article, which we're about to look at, it comes across, especially, towards the end, it comes across as something more in terms of her and Jordan Peterson. They seem to be saying there is some sort of transcendent, and the Judeo-Christian tradition and the Bible are sort of human beings trying to figure out and wrestle with these things. And so it's like, yeah, all these propositions are not necessarily true or something like this. It sounds like they're saying there is something beyond us. There's something above us. And we're kind of wrestling. And the Christian record is kind of one record of how this group has interacted with that transcendent and so on. And then other groups went in a totally different direction, and you see what it leads to, and it's all screwed up. So something along those lines. And it seems like they're saying, and the atheist position is to reject the transcendent. And it's actually a problem, because now you're denying that, and you need it. Something along those lines. All right, let's go through this article. So we saw Ayaan Hirsi Ali talking about it, and in that video sounded completely like pragmatic and practical. What the new atheists have is not capable of standing against what's going on in the world. Christianity is, and she made some points saying that the wrong discussion is like arguing about whether all these details are true and so on. Although some of them, she's saying, why are you arguing about whether God exists or not? I don't know. That seems like an important debate to me. But she's saying you should be thinking in terms of comparing. Like, this is what this belief leads to. This is what this system leads to. This is what this system leads to. This is the best. Therefore, throw that in the faces of other people, something along those lines. But so I saw that, and then I made a quick video about it. And then the next day she posted, let's see, this.
Why I'm a Christian.
Yep. So why I am a Christian. And she deliberately paralleled that on Bertrand Russell's famous essay. So we'll go ahead and read this, and AP, you can share your thoughts as we go through this. In 2002, I discovered a 1927 lecture by Bertrand Russell. It's probably the same year I read it, because that's when I was starting off in philosophy. But yeah, it's weird. I remember reading Bertrand Russell's Why I'm Not a Christian. I thought it was lame. Bertrand Russell, he's a combination, one, insanely intelligent. His history of philosophy is one of the best history of philosophies there are. That's what you're expecting. Hey, you've got a brilliant guy who's also a really great writer writing Why I'm Not a Christian. You're expecting something really awesome. And I don't know, it seemed like the same thing some second or third year philosophy student who happens to be an atheist would write. That's what it seemed like to me. And so I was expecting something much better. Anyway, in 2002, I discovered a 1927 lecture by Bertrand Russell entitled Why I Am Not a Christian. It did not cross my mind as I read it that one day, nearly a century after he delivered it to the South London branch of the National Secular Society, I would be compelled to write an essay with precisely the opposite title. And at the top, her title is Why I Am Now a Christian. The year before, I had publicly condemned the terrorist attacks of the 19 men who had hijacked passenger jets and crashed them into the Twin Towers in New York. They had done it in the name of my religion, Islam. I was a Muslim then, so she was still a Muslim after 9/11. I was a Muslim then, although not a practicing one. If I truly condemned their actions, then where did that leave me? The underlying principle that justified the attacks was religious, after all. The idea of jihad, or holy war against the infidels. Was it possible for me, as for many members of the Muslim community, simply to distance myself from the action and its horrific results? So sounds like she's saying she's had a kind of crisis here. I want to condemn this, but if this is actually from my religion, how do I then condemn it? At the time, so back at the top, there were many eminent leaders in the West, politicians, scholars, journalists, and other experts who insisted that the terrorists were motivated by reasons other than the ones they and their leader, Osama bin Laden, had articulated so clearly. So Islam had an alibi. That's funny. They articulated it so clearly and say, no, let us tell you what your real reasons are.
We are doing this for Allah. No, don't listen to them. They're doing this because of social and economic issues.
They're doing it because of climate change. Don't listen to what they tell you. This excuse-making was not only condescending towards Muslims, it also gave many Westerners a chance to retreat into denial, blaming the errors of U.S. foreign policy. Yep.
I'm sorry.
Denial is a river. Blaming the errors of U.S. foreign policy was easier than contemplating the possibility that we were confronted with a religious war. It's just easier to believe. We have seen a similar tendency in the past 5 weeks as millions of people sympathetic to the plight of Gazans seek to rationalize the October 7th terrorist attacks as a justified response to the policies of the Israeli government. That's interesting. She's pointing out that you've got the exact same thing. It's easier to blame something other than the religious motivation. When I read Russell's lecture, I found my cognitive dissonance easing. It was a relief to adopt an attitude of skepticism towards religious doctrine, discard my faith in God, and declare that no such entity existed, So it was a way out of cognitive dissonance. Best of all, I could reject the existence of hell and the danger of everlasting punishment. Russell's assertion that religion is based primarily on fear resonated with me. I had lived for too long in terror of all the gruesome punishments that awaited me. While I had abandoned all the rational reasons for believing in God, that irrational fear of hellfire still lingered. I've heard that from lots of people. I've heard that from people who've left Christianity as well, that they reject God, they reject Christianity, but they still have this ongoing fear of, gosh, I don't know what's going to happen.
I had that for a long time too, myself. Then it's somehow just faded and went away. But I think until a certain point, I also thought that what creates or motivates religion is fear. But I think, I don't know, over time, over the last years, I kind of came to the conclusion, that's where I am right now. I don't know, maybe I'll think differently in the future, that is not entirely accurate. But that, completely from a secular perspective, that religion is, and this makes me appreciate religion actually, that religion is kind of a way for humans, for civilizations to find meaning, to make sense of all the things that are going on around them. And it's actually a very a noble, and a search for wisdom, and that's something that is worth appreciating, in my opinion.
So she says that irrational fear of hellfire still lingered. Russell's conclusion thus came as something of a relief. When I die, I shall rot. See?
Yeah.
To understand why I became an atheist 20 years ago, you first need to understand the kind of Muslim I had been. This is why I brought up that you might be different because you were a different kind of Muslim. I was a teenager when the Muslim Brotherhood...
the correct kind of Muslim. Okay,
you were the truth. She was, you were you were the true sect, and she's one of the 72 false sects. Yes. Oh, I can't say sects. Sects around.
Sects. Be careful what you say.
I was a teenager when the Muslim Brotherhood penetrated my community in Nairobi, Kenya in 1985. I don't think I had even understood religious practice before the coming of the Brotherhood. I had endured the rituals of ablutions, prayers, and fasting as tedious and pointless. This actually gets, I remember this gets interesting, her breaking down what the Brotherhood does. The preachers of the Muslim Brotherhood changed this. They articulated a direction, the straight path, a purpose to work towards admission into Allah's paradise after death, a method, the Prophet's instruction manual of do's and don'ts, the halal and the haram. As a detailed supplement to the Quran, the Hadith spelled out how to put into practice the difference between right and wrong, good and evil, God and the devil. The Brotherhood preachers left nothing to the imagination. They gave us a choice: strive to live by the Prophet's manual and reap the glorious rewards in the hereafter. On this earth, meanwhile, the greatest achievement possible was to die as a martyr for the sake of Allah. That sounds like what I read in Sahih al-Bukhari, Sahih Muslim, and so on.
Mm-hmm.
What is this? The alternative, indulging in the pleasures of the world, was to earn Allah's wrath and be condemned to an eternal life in hellfire. Some of the worldly pleasures they were decrying included reading novels, listening to music, dancing, and going to the cinema, all of which I was ashamed to admit that I adored. The most striking quality of the Muslim Brotherhood, here we go. The most striking quality of the Muslim Brotherhood was their ability to transform me and my fellow teenagers from passive believers into activists almost overnight. We didn't, and the reason I said this is interesting is because this is similar to Dawah, and we have a perspective here in the West of, hey, I've got Muslim friends and I get along with Muslims and there are all these nice Muslims, and not realizing, according to lots of people, a perfectly nice Muslim could be radicalized fairly easy by. Keep in mind, I'm not saying any Muslim can be radicalized or turned violent. No, I'm not talking about that. I'm saying there are lots of people who are just going and living their lives as Muslims not thinking about things who could have a dawah guy or a jihadi or something jump in all of a sudden and say, hey, do you believe this? Do you actually believe this? You're living your life just like a Westerner. Do you actually believe that Islam is true? Yes, I believe it. Okay, well, let's look at what Muhammad actually commanded. Are you living like this? No, I'm not. And some of those will say, look, man, I'm not interested in this. I'm just going to go ahead and live my life as a Muslim and go to school and get a job and so on. But there are plenty of people who go, wow, gosh, yes, if I do believe this, I do need to take it seriously. And then you get a different sort of person.
Yeah.
And this is why you can have a group like ISIS forms, and they can put out the call, and you have people from the United States, Canada, France, Germany, the UK, all flooding into Iraq to join that group. Pretty easy to do. So anyway, she says, the Muslim Brotherhood has this ability to turn believers into activists almost overnight. We didn't just say things or pray for things, we did things. As girls, we donned the burqa and swore off Western fashion and makeup. The boys cultivated their facial hair to the greatest extent possible. They wore the white dress-like taub worn in Arab countries, or had their trousers shortened above the ankle bones, or stripped naked like Muhammad Hijab, the part-time stripper. We operated in groups and volunteered our services in charity to the poor, the old, the disabled, and the weak. We urged fellow Muslims to pray and demanded that non-Muslims convert to Islam. During Islamic study sessions, we shared with the preacher in charge of the session our worries. For instance, what should we do about the friends we loved and felt loyal to, but who refused to accept our dawah, invitation to the faith? In response, we were reminded repeatedly about the clarity of the Prophet's instructions. We were told in no uncertain terms that we could not be loyal to Allah and Muhammad while also maintaining friendships and loyalty towards the unbelievers. If they explicitly rejected our summons to Islam, we were to hate and curse them. And I have to say that is the perspective you get from the Quran. Here, a special hatred was reserved for one subset of unbeliever, the Jew. We cursed the Jews multiple times a day and expressed horror, disgust, and anger at the litany of offenses he had allegedly committed. The Jew had betrayed our prophet. He had occupied the holy mosque in Jerusalem. He continued to spread corruption of the heart, mind, and soul. You can see why, to someone who had been through such a religious schooling, atheism seemed so appealing. Bertrand Russell offered a simple, zero-cost escape from an unbearable life of self-denial and harassment of other people. For him, there was no credible case for the existence of God. Religion, Russell argued, was rooted in fear. Fear is the basis of the whole thing. Fear of the mysterious, fear of defeat, fear of death. As an atheist, I thought I would lose that fear. I also found an entirely new circle of friends, as different from the preachers of the Muslim Brotherhood as one could imagine. The more time I spent with them, people such as Christopher Hitchens and Richard Dawkins, the more confident I felt that I had made the right choice. For the atheists were clever. They were also a great deal of fun. What? What could be more fun than the Muslim Brotherhood? So what changed? Why do I call myself a Christian now? That's what we're all asking. Part of the answer is global. So, notice she's breaking down the answer into parts. Part of the answer is global. Western civilization is under threat from three different but related forces. The resurgence of great power, authoritarianism, and expansionism in the forms of the Chinese Communist Party and Vladimir Putin's Russia. So you have, it is just common today. Not as common right now, but if you go back 15 years, what are you talking about, man? The world has moved past all this, empires and people crushing. No, that's not what happened. What actually happened was there are people in different parts of the world who still want to conquer the world. They just happen to be scared of the United States. And then once the United States starts getting weak, people smell blood and they smell weakness. And then they say, okay, now's the time. And you have a bunch of forces, very powerful forces, who would love to eat you alive. And they were just waiting for weakness. Now they're seeing weakness. And so now you're getting some of it.
Things don't look very nice.
No. And I think a bunch of people are about to wake up to reality.
Yeah.
Because there are a bunch of groups out there that would love to eat you alive. So she lists here, Chinese Communist Party, Vladimir Putin's Russia, the rise of global Islamism, which threatens to mobilize a vast population against the West, and the viral spread of woke ideology, which is eating into the moral fiber of the next generation. And what's really creepy is how these groups will combine. Notice you'll have communists and Muslims and woke people marching side by side on college campuses. So you can get some pretty weird alliances.
Combination. The dumbest
It's absolutely. They cannot coexist except as a temporary alliance to attack someone else.
Yeah. It's only the woke side is dumb enough to believe that that things are all cute and wonderful, and it's all going to work out. The Muslims are very well aware that they want nothing to do with them once they get what they want.
Yep. So, they view them as useful idiots.
Yes, precisely.
Yep. We endeavor to fend off these threats. Oh, here we go. We endeavor to fend off these threats with modern, secular tools, military, economic, diplomatic, and technological efforts to defeat, bribe, persuade, appease, or surveil. And yet, with every round of conflict, we find ourselves losing ground. We are either running out of money with our national debt in the tens of trillions of dollars, or we are losing our lead in the technological race with China. Point is, the advantages you had that gave you this confidence in peace, you're losing those advantages over time.
I think that's not entirely realistic. That's a misconception. I've seen lots of expert view on that, on how China is not really a great threat in terms of development. They might have like market influence in the world, but they're not really creating anything.
No, I'm thinking like long term. The point is, if you owe trillions and trillions of dollars to someone, you're basically paying the interest and you're feeding them money. And so I'm thinking like down the road, they are just going to get more and more powerful. As far as like militarily, I mean, United States still wouldn't have any problem with any of these things. The point is
generations ahead. Yeah.
But we can't fight off these formidable forces unless we can answer the question, what is it that unites us? The response that God is dead seems insufficient. So, too, does the attempt to find solace in the rules-based liberal international order. The only credible answer, I believe, lies in our desire to uphold the legacy of the Judeo-Christian tradition. Basically, the standard what's available to atheists and to liberals and so on, as far as thinking that they can stand against it. She's saying it's not enough. You're not going to do it. That legacy consists of an elaborate set of ideas and institutions designed to safeguard human life, freedom, and dignity, from the nation state and the rule of law to the institutions of science, health, and learning. As Tom Holland has shown in his marvelous book, Dominion, all sorts of apparently secular freedoms of the market, of conscience, and of the press find their roots in Christianity. And I think Holland's an atheist, isn't he?
Yeah.
Yeah. And
pretty
so
sure as the latest, I think he's an atheist.
Yeah. And so I have come to realize that Russell and my atheist...
Yeah, pretty sure, yeah.
And so I have come to realize that Russell... What the heck is wrong with you, man? You see this? You see what it's like trying to do anything with an atheist? This is why you guys can't stand against communism and Islam.
Go ahead.
And so I've come to realize that Russell and my atheist friends failed to see the wood for the trees. The wood is the civilization built on the Judeo-Christian tradition. It is the story of the West, warts and all. Russell's critique of those contradictions in Christian doctrine is serious, but it is also too narrow in scope. For instance, he gave... Oh, interesting. She's pointing out a situation that lots of the new atheists haven't seemed to grasp, that they're kind of in this position because they're standing on the shoulders of others that came long before them. But she says, for instance, he gave his lecture, again, this is a century ago, he gave his lecture in a room full of former or at least doubting Christians in a Christian country. Think about how unique that was nearly a century ago and how rare it still is in non-Western civilizations. Could a Muslim philosopher stand before any audience in a Muslim country, then or now, and deliver a lecture with the title, Why I Am Not a Muslim? In fact, a book with that title does exist, written by an ex-Muslim. but the author published it in America under the pseudonym Ibn Warraq, it would have been too dangerous to do otherwise. So even in the West, you're still in danger from writing a book saying why you're not a Muslim.
Alhamdulillah.
To me, this freedom of conscience and speech is perhaps the greatest benefit of Western civilization. It does not come naturally to man. Oh, that's interesting, right? That's kind of the problem. People are thinking, this is how things have been my entire life, so this is what's natural. This is just naturally the way human beings are. Yeah. And we have that same idea. It always leads to disaster, but it's the idea behind, oh, if we just go over the Middle East, and what's the problem there? Oh, Saddam Hussein. We'll just get rid of Saddam Hussein, and then all the freedom-loving people who just do what comes naturally, and that's to seek freedom of conscience and all this other stuff, that will rise to the surface and they'll get a great democracy. What did you actually get? ISIS. You giant morons. People don't think. Yeah, so anyway, what seems natural to you is because you are in a certain environment. It is not natural. It is not normal. It takes a long time to get something like this, and everyone's trying to destroy it. Everyone's trying to destroy it, and you don't realize, hey, if you happen to destroy it, it's going to be a long, difficult road to get it back.
There was a time that I watched a movie with my wife. I think that was when I just came to America.
You ain't watching a movie, man. Come on.
Yeah, and it was a Bill Murray movie. I don't entirely remember what it was called, but after I watched that movie, I felt unreasonably angry at the stupidity or at the naivety of people, and of Western people in this case. And the movie, I don't remember what it was called, but the premise is that I think it was him. It was Bill Murray, but he goes to Afghanistan to find some talents for some music thing.
That's Rock the Casbah.
Yes, exactly that one. That one.
I haven't seen it, but I remember the trailer for it.
Yeah, and he goes there, and then he goes through this whole trouble with this girl who can sing very well, but of course her family doesn't allow it. They are hardcore, and they are totally against a woman putting herself out there and singing and all of that. But then of course he somehow teaches them, in a way, compassion. I don't know, whatever happens, I forgot the entire plot, but the end result of it is that somehow after her father sees his daughter sing on TV, he comes around, gets emotional, and is like, okay, I accept this. Mm-hmm. And basically the idea of the whole thing is, in the end we are all the same, and we just need to be shown, this
That's why you just need a pen pal.
I watched that movie and I thought, how stupid, how dumb is this, man? These people have no clue what's going on in other parts of the world. Like this guy would be killed.
Yeah, and it just sucks because movies like that do nothing to persuade the Taliban or anything else. It just lulls Westerners into thinking, all you have to do is get the girl on stage, and her family's not going to kill her at all.
Yeah, man.
Welcome to Fantasyland. Tamara says secularism / atheism and guys like AP are Europe's best chance for stopping Islamization, as Christians tend to be more tolerant of a religious expression as a whole. I don't think so. I think that's kind of surface. I think that is a kind of surface level understand. Again, say what you want. Say what you want about Christians. For 14 centuries, Christians said, whatever disagreements we may have, whatever fights we may have among ourselves, we are not under any circumstances going to be controlled by that ever. And then you have the rise of secularism recently, and it's like, hey, we can't invite in Islam fast enough. We love it. And so that's kind of the point that Ayaan is making. It's like, you would think, oh yeah, secularism and so on, that's going to stand against Islam. And she's saying, no, there's some deeper issues here. You do not see how these things are connected to one another, and it's not going to stand against it. To me, this freedom of conscience and speech is perhaps the greatest benefit of Western civilization. It does not come naturally to man. It is the product of centuries of debate within Jewish and Christian communities. It was these debates that advanced science and reason, diminished cruelty, suppressed superstitions, and built institutions to order and protect life while guaranteeing freedom to as many people as possible. Unlike Islam, Christianity outgrew its dogmatic stage. It became increasingly clear that Christ's teaching implied not only a circumscribed role for religion as something separate from politics, it also implied compassion for the sinner and humility for the believer. Yeah.
I bet IP would love this part.
I bet AP needs some humility for the believer. Yet I would not be truthful if I attributed my embrace. Oh, here we go. Yet I would not be truthful if I attributed my embrace of Christianity solely to the realization that atheism is too weak. You're weak!
Weakling!
Ayaan Hirsi Ali called you weak, you pathetic little weaklings. My realization that atheism is too weak and stupid and cowardly and divisive a doctrine to fortify us against our menacing foes. I have also turned to, here we go. I have also turned to Christianity because I ultimately found life without any spiritual solace unendurable. Indeed, very nearly self-destructive. Atheism failed to answer a simple question: what is the meaning and purpose of life?
That's very interesting, because I feel like I was there many years ago, but I haven't really felt that in a very long time. So that's quite interesting.
Yeah, but no, atheism can answer that. The answer is none. There's none. There's no meaning. There's no purpose. So shut up.
The answer is, how about no?
So shut up,
How
or
about
we'll line.
no meaning?
Yeah. So shut up, or we'll line you up against walls and massacre you.
Yeah, I want to be killed.
Hey. What do you think about that? Russell and other activist atheists believed that with the rejection of God, we would enter an age of reason and intelligent humanism. Yeah, that's what I've been saying for a while. They thought that, like, it's a failed experiment. But the God hole, the void left by the retreat of the church, has merely been filled by a jumble of irrational quasi-religious dogma. The result is a world where modern cults prey on the dislocated masses, offering them spurious reasons for being and action, mostly by engaging in virtue signaling theater on behalf of a victimized minority of our supposedly doomed planet. The line often, my goodness, she's quoting G.K. Chesterton. The line often attributed to G.K. Chesterton has turned into a prophecy. When men choose not to believe in God, they do not thereafter believe in nothing. They then become capable of believing in anything, which is why AP will believe absolutely anything, no matter how dumb it is.
Yeah, that's what I do. I believe anything I see.
Yeah. You're the ear. AP is the ear. In this nihilistic vacuum, the challenge before us becomes civilizational. We can't withstand China, Russia, and Iran if we can't explain to our populations why it matters that we do. We can't fight woke ideology if we can't defend the civilization that it is determined to destroy. And we can't counter Islamism with purely secular tools. To win the hearts and minds of Muslims here in the West, we have to offer them something more than videos on TikTok.
What about video games?
So
Haven't thought of that.
Oh, we're almost done here. Let's go ahead and finish this up. Let's see, 2 more paragraphs. The lesson I learned from my years with the Muslim Brotherhood was the power of a unifying story embedded in the foundational texts of Islam to attract, engage, and mobilize the Muslim masses. Unless we offer something as meaningful, I fear the erosion of our civilization will continue. Unfortunately, there is no need to look for some new age concoction of medication and mindfulness. Christianity has it all. You hear that, ladies and gentlemen? You hear that, AP? Christianity has it all. You don't need some weird new age concoction, cocktail of silliness. Christianity has it all. What are you grinning at? That is why I no longer consider myself a Muslim apostate, but a lapsed atheist. Of course, I still have a great deal to learn about Christianity. I discover a little more at church each Sunday. Aha! So she goes to church. See that? But no, she's just saying she just wants to protect herself from communism. But I have recognized in my own long journey through a wilderness of fear and self-doubt that there is a better way to manage the challenges of existence than either Islam or unbelief had to offer.
Alhamdulillah.
There you have it, ladies and gentlemen.
Now here is where my problem is with all of this.
Okay, negative AP again. Tell us why you hate everyone who disagrees with you. Go ahead.
It is actually, well, I'm actually going to give credit and acknowledge that there is one thing that where I see where she's coming from. So I said earlier, for example, that I haven't felt that whole emptiness and that whole nothing can replace that lack of meaning. I haven't felt that in a long time.
I'm the atheist without a God hole. Yeah, right.
I haven't felt it in a long time, but I feel like what made that what helped me get over that very much was engaging deeply with certain philosophers and with certain ideas such as Nietzsche, Albert Camus, and also I would say to an extent even Schopenhauer, and that actually kind of punched me in the face. But I feel like over the years I kind of came to this whole conclusion.
You picked like the worst possible. Like if I were to make a list, the absolute worst. Well, my goodness. All right,
no, I didn't even take anything from what Schopenhauer actively teaches, but rather from his insights about the whole the how humans function and what they are motivated by and all that. I thought, this is really profound. It is really depressing. It makes me want to kill myself. But
that's what I was thinking. Well, it's like everyone you just named.
but there's something really profound there.
You've pointed out that the takeaway from Nietzsche isn't necessarily a nihilism or something like that, but the takeaway of kind of his life is, right. You look at it like the whole thing was like, oh my goodness, are you joking?
No, actually, no. From Nietzsche, what I got from Nietzsche was actually very, very interesting. I thought, wow, nice, okay, cool. But Schopenhauer is the one that made me think, what's even the point? Why don't I just go die? But the thing is,
and then Camus, giant thing where the guy turns into a cockroach.
him too. But one thing that they all highlight in one way or another, especially Camus, is okay. So Schopenhauer highlights one thing, which is that everything is eventually meaningless. It's like all living beings, all organisms, they are all just existing, just looking to exist, and just spending their entire existence consuming each other. But the dark truth beneath all of that is that this just goes on forever and ever, and everything we do in life is all a sweetened illusion, and at the root of all of it is just continue existing and consume anything else that is there, continue existing and consume anything else, and that is depressing.
By the way, that's actually what Bertrand Russell sounded like, and he had this same kind of like dual life without spotting the tension that we find in like Dawkins, when Dawkins is like, the universe is obviously at the bottom. There is nothing. There's no good, bad, right, wrong, anything. And there's no concern or anything. It's all just, but we need to go out and live and make the world a better place. And so it's like, wait a minute. But Bertrand Russell said that like no philosophy that is not grounded on like despair can hope to survive and so on. It was a horrible misery. Hey, it's funny. I don't know why I remember this, but so this was probably, 2003, 2004. I'm in a philosophy class and the topic is Schopenhauer. And I wrote down, the beginning of a poem popped into my head. And I wrote, I died 11 deaths today while waiting for my 12th. Then spent an hour with Schopenhauer. We're drinking to my health. And I realized it was like this pathetic, die. We're all going to die. It's all right. Anyway,
that's very nice. Well, he was also a very depressed guy, and he thought everything we do in life is basically like, but we don't even love each other. It's like we're just telling ourselves to love each other because we think that's a means to, we somehow have to endure that. Anyway, but what actually made me kind of feel better about everything was Camus, when he talks about how he says basically that humans are caught in this endless struggle and torture of finding a meaning finding the meaning of life, and they get upset over and over again because they can't properly find the meaning in life, and they argue about what that meaning in life is, when in reality they are too afraid to simply face the fact that there is no such thing as a meaning of life. And he doesn't say there is no meaning of life. He says there is no such thing as a meaning of life. So looking for that non-existent thing, or saying there is no meaning or there is a meaning, but what is it? All of it is just a constant struggle that causes nothing but pain and suffering. And of course, you can then add to that whatever you take from it. But that kind of helped me get to a certain point where I thought, hey, you know what? That makes sense. The whole discussions of, so what is then the meaning of life? If you spend your entire life arguing about that and looking for that, that seems like that seems like a quite painful and agonizing thing to torture yourself with, especially once you have lost faith in an afterlife or in a creation or in an ultimate meaning of life. That is a very, very, very torturous, a very agonizing thing. But simply doing what that guy suggests, for example, and saying, hey, you know what? I don't have to look for it. I don't have to find it. Why would I try to find something that never existed? Is probably more of a relief than doing the opposite. I don't know, but along those lines, this is like a long, endless hole that we would have to dive into and go on forever. But kind of that built something, that built something that gave me relief from that emptiness that she describes in that article, for example.
And so there you have AP's answer to what do you do with this God-shaped hole that is within every one of us. He says, just fill it up with an endless supply of Schopenhauer and other depressing tales.
I'm serious. When I first got into Schopenhauer, I thought, why did I do this? Why did I even read this?
Samuel said, I watched a video by Dawkins, and he made it seem like believing in a young Earth was the worst sin. D. Wood, do you have any position on the Earth's age? No, I don't. I would definitely lean in the direction of, I would lean strongly away from young Earth. But yeah, I don't know. I wouldn't rule. I tend not to rule things out unless I actually study them a lot, and I haven't. But you would have to have some really awesome evidence for me to think that the Earth is like 10,000 years old or something like that. I never have heard young Earth people also add to 6,000-year Earth, with Adam living 933 years and Enoch 365, and all others who live for 300 years. Yeah, I don't particularly study this thing, but I mean, if anyone wants to explain everything to us, be happy to listen, and IP could be enraged about it. Julio says, hello, handsome people, and hello, David. That's funny. You hear that? Hello, handsome people, and hello, David. AP, you need to read up a ton of philosophical atheism. I do not want you going theist. Just kidding. You do you.
Thank you.
Philosophical atheism.
Then you go to the classical atheism, to the old ones.
Philosophical atheism. If that's not an oxymoron.
Did you ever study those guys? Did you ever study? I don't know.
Who?
What is it? Feuerbach? No. I don't know. Let's talk about the oldest ones.
I remember Feuerbach. Was that the guy who said? I mean, he quoted an ancient Greek, but I think he was the one who's talking about if horses could make a god, they would make a god like a horse. Wait, was that Feuerbach? I'm trying to remember. I remember. Yeah, I remember. Feuerbach.
I never read anything a long time ago from those people, but I don't know. That's funny.
Here we got it. Don Taylor. I missed the repentance part of her conversion. There you have it, ladies and gentlemen. You've always got the people who are like, okay, she comes from a massively messed up Islamic background, becomes an atheist, hangs out with the new atheists all this time, then declares that she's a Christian, but says, I'm going to church, I don't know enough about it. And then, she didn't get it right. Notice this is, and
it's true though. Why didn't she repent?
Yeah. And, this is a pretty natural reaction. I've seen it from lots of Christians all over the internet, but, the parallel, this kind of thinking like, hey, we cannot acknowledge any sort of progress in a person's views. And you just got to be finished final product, and that's all that matters. I mean, notice it's like the people, the United States is evil. Really, what's evil? They had slavery. Like, wait a minute. Can you acknowledge that they like progressed out of it? And that was like started, like that's what it was. Like they started with what they were given. I mean, there was slavery there before the United States existed, and then it didn't last a century, and they kind of progressed. Can you acknowledge that? No.
Why
gotta be
weren't
finished.
they always perfect?
You got to start off as finished final product or shut up.
Why weren't they always perfect?
Justin says, as a former member of the United Methodist Church, I'm skeptical that the church will help that much in combating the influence of Islam. Yet we're not talking, dude, I'm not talking about the church the way it is now. I'm saying for some reason, when people took it seriously, they did not submit to Islam. They didn't. They just did not submit to Islam. Now, yes, your average church would bend over backwards to not hurt the feelings of a Muslim. The church itself has absorbed a ton of bad ideas. We're not saying, hey, yeah, the church as it is going to look around. It's not. We're saying, and this is what Ayaan Hirsi Ali is saying, this is what has the potential to. This is what has the potential to stand against it.
Okay, here's one thing I'm going to say, though. So I know that this might get a lot of disagreement, and you'll be like, how dare you say this? And people might hate me for it. But just an observation as an outsider who looks into history, who likes to look into history, I feel like the Orthodox and the Catholic trends were more resistant against Islam than the Protestant. And wouldn't you agree with that to a certain extent? And why is that? Why is that lacking in the Protestant realm?
No, I wouldn't agree with that. I would agree that there is but I can give you an idea of an issue. Chesterton brought this up. It's interesting because Chesterton, he eventually became a Catholic, but he said this before he became a Catholic, and it's tied into lots of other things. But even in Orthodoxy, so before he became a Catholic, he referred to the fracturing of the church that occurred with the Protestant Reformation. And people look at that and say, why is he blasting away at the Protestant Reformation? The point he's making, and I've seen Jordan Peterson make this same point when he was talking to Constantine from Trigonometry, when Constantine's like, I don't believe I need this mediator, blah, 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 blah. I wouldn't need these mediators between me and God and something like this. You go, oh, well, that would make you a good Protestant then, right? He's talking about the type of thinking. But what Chesterton was getting at is you have the church. You used to have the church. You had the church. And Martin Luther starts off, he's not trying to start another church. He's saying, hey, here are all the things we need to fix. And they have people saying, no, we're not going along with you on these things. And then so it gets to a point where, okay, I'm no longer offering an internal critique. We're separating. We need to be separate, right? And notice, I don't know what else you do if you say, hey, I cannot be, I disagree with you. I do not believe that some of the things you're saying are actually correct, and you're not willing to fix them. And therefore I just have to go start my own thing. But what Chesterton's getting at is, so now notice you have another church. So you got the church and you got this other church. But notice the pattern you just set. We have disagreements, we split. We don't keep it together and settle our disagreements, we split. So what happens? Okay, well, are you going to have disagreements within Protestantism? Yeah, so what do you do? Well, okay, I disagree with you about this. All right, split again. I disagree with you again. Now split again. And eventually you're just totally fractured, right? And so that's kind of Chesterton's position. Then you end up with, you've got the Catholic Church, and then you have like a ton of different Protestant churches. Mm-hmm. And so you lack the danger is you eventually get to a point where, oh, you believe in having the flowers on that side of the stage. I prefer my flowers on this side of the stage. Therefore, we need to separate and have two different churches, and you can have the flowers on that side and I'll have the flowers on this side. And we need to separate over everything until it's just, what do you prefer as a person? Let's have a church for whatever you happen to prefer. And so you end up with a kind of fracturing. Now, once that has gone on long enough, it's like you don't have something that really stands united against something else. So I would say that towards the beginning, before it had kept fracturing a ton, Protestants would not have given an inch to Islam, but you do have this tendency to split up into more and more denominations, which kind of lack a kind of unity after that.
Yeah, okay, that makes sense.
Danilo says, Islam is the fake religion that God warned us about. All that Muhammad did and stands for is exactly what Satan would want to do to corrupt humanity. Yeah, I mean, it does look, I mean, if you were to look at the New Testament concept of a false prophet and what a false prophet is going to do, it would look a lot like Islam. And I've mentioned this before, that, you know, Muhammad comes along, hey, you Christians, hey, I agree with you. God exists. I agree with you. God sent prophets. I agree with you. Jesus is born of a virgin. I agree with you. He performed all these miracles. I agree with you. He's the Messiah. I agree with you. He's going to come back. Only problem is he didn't die on the cross for sins. He didn't rise from the dead. And he's not Lord. It's like, wait, AP, if you eventually read the book of Acts, that's the core of the Christian gospel. And we're told that false prophets are going to come and are going to corrupt that. And you say, well, why not corrupt everything? Why not corrupt absolutely everything? Well, it's been pointed out, like, the job of a counterfeiter, a good counterfeiter, is to make it as much like what's authentic as possible while still being counterfeit and so on. So the response to Muhammad should be, my goodness, we've been waiting for you. You are like the perfect example of what a false prophet is supposed to be. Yeah, where have you been all our lives? You're the ultimate false prophet. The next Zakir Naik here says, David, if you watch Ken Ham and Ken Hovind, they will convince you that the earth is young. They will destroy you. Joking.
Will humiliate you.
He says, joking, I'm leaning towards young earth creation. And what's funny is, like, you got the people who are enraged at Ken Ham and Ken Hovind. So these are like the young earth guys. I don't know. I like them. I kind of like them all. Like, I totally like people who might disagree with me or have other positions and so on. I was like, okay, I get your point. I see. Okay. You're saying, hey, Genesis says this. A bunch of scientists who change their mind all the time say something else. I'll go with Genesis.
I mean, Ken Ham is kind of a nice-ish guy.
But he's also funny, and for me, that's the criterion. Like, if you're funny, I've watched and listened to Ken Ham before. He's actually Australian, and he's funny.
Yeah, the thing with Kent Hovind is that he is very antagonizing, very offensive to people who hold different ideas, which is why people often, reply with the very same attitude.
Kale says, does AP believe that morality is relative or objective? Relative.
See, that is a very, 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 very big discussion.
You're just scared of the word.
No, because I don't believe that it is possible to reduce it to objective and relative, or objective and subjective. I feel like that is a complete oversimplification of things, and I lean more toward saying that morality is non-cognitive, or that it cannot be relative the way I see it, and that it is merely that it never becomes at some point, that moral values never become at some point facts, that they never become actually verifiable or true or false, no matter if we're talking about objective or relative, but that morality is entirely simply a concept, a system that humans established to deal with certain needs that they saw in life, such as the need to live together in a society. They adopted certain ideas to which they then established rules and acted as if those rules were self-explanatory or natural, or that's just the natural order of things, or my morals are better than your morals. But in the end, at the root of all of it, they are just expressions of people's feelings. Of what they think is and isn't good, and some people call that emotivism, for example. That is one way of understanding it. But the issue is, I find the whole discussion of objectivism and relativism way too much of an oversimplification.
Except everything you just said shows that you believe it's relative. So
no, there is a difference, though. There is a difference here. There is a very clear difference here. But I would have. Liar! You know, that's also the thing. Like, if you look at it from the outside, you would say, well, but that is relativism. Okay, yes, you might say that is relativism, but from the very perspective itself, which is actually what matters here, it is not relativism. From the perspective, like from the non-cognitivist perspective, you could say
Relativism is
there
objectively
is
true.
relativism, but I don't. But I don't agree with either of them. I think they're both not entirely correct. So. Whatever, long discussion. I talked about this in my whole Muhammad hijab video a long time ago, and it already took like half the video.
Where you defended incest and cousin marriage?
No.
That's what I heard from them. Anyway, Abdu says, I think the genealogy of Jesus in Luke 3 is proof for a young earth theology. A young earther might say that, but an old earther would say there's more evidence involved that you have to consider. Yeah. Joshua says, any Christian dismissing Ayaan Hirsi Ali and Kat Von D, Philippians 1:6, if we are born again, sanctification is a process. Also, don't let Muhammad hijab hear you say, God, they sexualize everything. Yeah, you got to worry about what you say around these pervert Dawa guys. For the Christians who are like, I'm not even clear on whether she believes in God. So, I mean, it's not clear that it doesn't look like she's a Christian in any traditional Christian sense of the term. I'm looking at this like, let me just give you an example. So this was years ago, maybe, I don't know, I'd have to look it up, but maybe 2012 or something. I did a debate at Columbia University. And I was hanging out with some atheists afterwards. They were all Asian atheist students. And we were hanging out afterwards, maybe 5 or 6 of them. And they kept asking me, why do you believe this? Why do you believe that? And so on. Anyway, gave them a short version of my testimony and so on. And then we're talking about various arguments. And then one of them finally says, he goes, I'm just going to be honest. I don't care about whether it's true. I just care that it's bad. And he said that. And so, and I was shocked by this because, you know, this isn't too far away from when I was, a young atheist and so on, but that was totally foreign to me. It was like, wait a minute. I mean, I was an atheist because I didn't believe, but it mattered to me. But the main concern is whether it's true or not, right? If it's true, then okay, I'm going to believe it. It being bad would be a secondary concern, but for them, it was the main concern. But anyway, I'm sitting there with these students and I was like surprised that he said, I don't care if it's true. I just care that it's bad. And I went down the line and and I said, do you agree with that? And the next atheist agreed. And I went to the next one. This entire line of atheists all agreed with that claim. I do not care if it's true. I just care that it's bad. And I was really surprised by that. But anyway, that was kind of the middle of this whole atheist movement. Religion's just bad. It's all terrible. It does nothing. It does nothing but hinder and hurt society from developing. And now, one of the reasons I haven't gone nearly as hard against atheism as I have against Islam is, I mean, I've talked about some of the reasons before. Almost no one wanted to deal with Islam. Everyone wanted to deal with atheism. But there was a part of it where I was like, I believe your entire experiment's going to fail. And so I'm just going to wait till this comes crumbling to the ground because I think you guys have to go through it. And now it's crumbling to the ground. Now you have people who were prominent atheists all of a sudden saying, actually, guys, I'm going to church now because this sucks. What we've come up with sucks. And then...
Well, they were never real atheists to begin with. The real atheism is not like this. Nobody leaves atheism. Atheism didn't leave her. No, other way around. Sorry. Wrong.
Yeah, so... oh, whoops, did I forget to put that comment up there? Yeah.
You did.
As far as but she's not on board with all this. She doesn't have Christianity right yet. I mean, guys, do not underestimate the importance. If you've got all these atheists saying, I don't care if it's true or not, I care that it's bad. But then they decide that it's not bad anymore so that they can actually examine whether they believe in it or not. That's kind of a huge step. So I wouldn't be flipping out and being terribly negative over that.
How dare she not hold the right beliefs? Yeah, but the issue is that the average person doesn't necessarily hold the best ideas about whatever belief they have, right? So I'm sure you would agree with that. right.
And
And
yeah, I would say people underestimate the number of people who are just, you know, they grew up as a Christian and they haven't really thought through everything. And so you have a range
yeah,
of people. And I mean, a woman who just came out and said, okay, now I got the Muslims I've had the Muslims after me for a while, and now I'm going to have to deal with the new atheists. But you know, all right, I'm a Christian now. I don't know. I wouldn't be. But you don't have this right. You didn't subscribe to the Baptist Convention of 1832. No, I understand. I'm kind of joking because I mean, that what we've read in this article, that is not actually a Christian yet. But again, I'm looking in terms of, my goodness, look where she came from, then what she jumps into, and now what she's saying now. It looks like she's on a pretty awesome path. And as much as people like AP want to sit back and cry, I can't believe it, she's betrayed the atheist community. She was never a real atheist. You little weakling, you are never a real atheist.
get the rocks. No. So the thing is also with many of the atheists, especially with the whole new atheist trend, lots of people, lots of them, I would say that their idea of atheism is not necessarily grounded in in questioning the nature of things, and questioning the world, and concluding, oh, you know what? Nope, it doesn't make sense. I conclude hereby that there is no God. It's more a sensational thing. It's more of an emotional issue, more like a rejection of the moral aspects, more like going with the trend, more like saying, religion. What do you think this is, 19th century?
Yeah.
So it's most people don't like hold the best.
Yeah, there's lots of
to have certain beliefs.
Yeah, there's lots of superficial stuff going on where people just kind of go along with the crowd they're in, or what's popular at a time, or something like that, or something they saw in a YouTube video, and it's not a lot of depth to it. And that's true of a lot of people. That's true of people from a lot of different backgrounds. I will say, kind of, that, I mean, what she's saying, again, you have issues here, but she's not terribly far off from certain things in the history of Christianity that Christians generally like. I mean, think about like Pascal's wager, where Pascal, who's one of the pioneers of probability theory, says, hey, so, you don't believe in God? Suppose the odds were like 50-50 of whether God exists or didn't exist. Then, theoretically, you wouldn't say you believe in God, because you believe it's just like a 50% chance or something like that. But think about it. If you believe in God and follow God and it turns out to be true, then you'd get eternity. If you follow God and it turns out not to be true, then, well, you haven't lost anything because it's just pointless anyway. But if you don't follow God and God is real and so on, then, I mean, you've just lost a lot. You've lost a lot. You haven't been following the truth. And so he puts everything in terms of like betting categories. Like, if you could wager a bet, and you had a chance of an infinite payoff, you should take that bet. If I said, hey, I'm going to put $10 down, I might win some infinite payoff, you should take that in a heartbeat. But notice, and what he's saying is, this isn't solely about like the truth and what you know. There are other things that are involved in that. Most Christians like things like Pascal's wager. Oh, he's making a good point, because this is eternity involved. You should be taking that more seriously. And even if you weren't sure, well, let me give another example.
Thank you for reminding us of the worst argument for God there is.
They're all. That's not an argument for God. That was an argument if you were 50-50, taking other considerations.
Okay,
and there are all sorts of problems with Pascal's wager. Just like, okay, is it 50-50? There are other problems.
That's my main thing. It's not 50-50.
Yeah, there are other problems. Namely, just believing in God is not like, I don't know anyone who thinks just believing in God, that's the deciding factor in whether you spend an eternity with God. But the relevant issue there, because you could modify the position to get to get a better argument. But what he's advocating is called, I think if I recall correctly, it's been a while, but I think it's called doxastic voluntarism, meaning you can decide what to believe. I can just will myself into believing certain things that I want to believe for other reasons. And I had a discussion of that in my dissertation. I think one example I used was, imagine a scenario where your daughter is kidnapped, and suppose police tell you after she's been kidnapped that 80% of the time after a girl's been gone a certain period of time, she's been killed, and only 20% of girls are alive after a certain amount of time. And so your daughter's been gone this amount of time, and so there's a 20% chance that your daughter is alive. Statistically, it's a 20% chance. Should you, if you can, if there were like a switch that you could flip to believe that your daughter is alive, should you believe that she's alive, knowing that there's a 20% chance that she's actually alive? I think you could make a case, and this would be doxastic voluntarism, which is like you decide what you want to believe and you believe that. I think you can make a case that you should believe in that, even if it was only a 20% chance. The reason would be, if you know that you're going to, on the 20% chance that she's alive, if you know you have a much better chance of finding her if you are convinced that she's alive, you're better off believing that she's alive until you find out otherwise. And this is people who are searching through rubble after an earthquake or something. They say the same thing. They say, hey, we have no evidence that anyone's alive under there, but we have to search as if people are alive under there. And so the point here is there can be other factors other than what evidence do I have that this position is true? And let me go solely with the evidence. There are considerations. There are considerations like, hey, what does this lead to? Does this lead to the kind of world I want to be in? Is this capable of standing against the threats against me, and so on? So yeah, she's definitely missing some things as far as what we've read. But anyway, I said this towards the beginning. It's like, okay, here are the requirements for being a Christian, but I mean, in terms of deciding your beliefs, there are other relevant factors that need to be taken into account. And again, Pascal said that there are other factors involved. Joshua here, almost done. Quarter for D Wood. That liar sound you play is hilarious, but what is it from? You both have a better soundboard than every radio station. Yeah, that's from Princess Bride.
What is Princess Bride?
Oh, you got to watch Princess Bride. You'll love it. I have a pretty good idea of your movie taste. This is a little different from a lot of the stuff you talk about, but yeah, phenomenal. But in that one, the guy dies and they bring him to Miracle Max to bring him back, and his wife accuses him of lying to cover up true love. Anyway.
Oh yeah.
Awesome movie. You should check it out.
Nice.
And let's see. Whoops. Oh, yeah, I already saw that. And last one, Helen said, oh, it's a super sticker. All right. Wow. We've been on for a long time. We got through the super chats, everyone. But yeah, I think we're going to be seeing a lot more of people who were hostile at some point to certain ideas, hopefully rallying around some better ideas. I'm wondering if there's anyone else we can think of who should follow this pattern of from Islam to atheism to Christianity. If you can think of anyone, let me know.
Nobody comes to mind.
AP, final thoughts on all this before I close out?
I would say, this is all I expected, of course. So what do you expect from somebody who was never really a true atheist to begin with, and who never really, thought about anything, doesn't know anything, it's all emotions. But aside from all of that, yeah, of course, all of that is nonsense. I do appreciate the perspective that Ayaan Hirsi Ali presents, and I would say that I still can say that I respect the way she views things, her journey, the way she addresses it. Very significant. I'm looking forward to see where she will get with this. And I hope it will not end with, what do you mean by God? What do you mean by do? What do you mean by you? What do you mean by believe? What do you mean by in? What do you mean by God? So what she's doing right now is definitely better than that. But we'll see.
Yeah, it is interesting, and I think we're going to be seeing a lot more as people start to realize, like, whatever you think about her conclusion in all of this, she is diagnosing some of the problem. We're all arguing about all these things over here while people are marching to annihilate you. And so, but we will see what happens. Far 4 here. How about no?
How about no? I don't buy your Ella.
And if we wanted to put it in musical form, what? You just ruined everything. You interrupted the song. You never interrupt the song.
You don't interrupt the song. It's fine.
Never, ever interrupt the song, AP.
Don't talk while the
What's
song
wrong with
is ongoing. Don't talk while the song is going. Can't hear the song. Can't
All right,
hear the song.
what did you want to rudely interrupt with?
Oh, nothing. It's not important.
I had the perfect conclusion.